We are back on the ESBR YouTube channel with another preview video. I'm Sam Beresford and once again joined by Paul Kelly. Paul, how are you?
All right, Sam, how's it going? I'm all good, thanks. Hope you're keeping well.
Yeah, good, thank you. This week, just one card to preview, but I know I speak for myself, but it is probably one of the best cards we've actually have previewed on this show so far and in the 6th episode. Are you as excited for this card?
Yeah, definitely excited for this card. It's good to see. You know, we've got a tasty rematch as the main event. We've got a fight that was meant to be headlining at Fight Camp on the undercard. We've got a relative 50-50 in Maxie Hughes versus Giovanni Straffen. Katie Taylor, who's an absolute superstar, is on the card. So I don't really. What more can you really ask for? You know what I mean? I'm looking forward to this card for sure.
Yeah, and coming off that last kind of fight of Fight Camp where it was a little disappointing and it did kind of felt like Fight Camp kind of petered out a little bit, to be back 2 weeks later with a card as stacked as this one is really interesting. So in this video we just are going to take you through fight by fight, beginning with the main event all the way through. So obviously in the main event, what a fight we have. Lara Warrington 2. Will it be repeat? Will it be revenge? Lara obviously got the win all the way back in February with a 9th round finish of Josh Warrington. However, obviously this card is in Warrington's hometown at Headingley Stadium in Leeds. Just how much weight do you put into the fight being back in Leeds?
I actually put quite a bit of weight into it, to be honest with you, because I'm a big Josh Warrington fan. So I like to think that the reason, I'm not saying it's the only reason, but one of the reasons he maybe got beat last time was because there was no crowd. You know, he couldn't G himself up. We've seen Warrington before put on some amazing performances in front of a crowd. The Ellen Road performance against Lee Selby. I, for one, thought Lee Selby would have won that fight easily, but it was in fact the other way around. The Frampton fight, I know it was in Manchester, but even again, the Leeds fans travelled down and there was just a buzz around that fight. It got Warrington up, so I don't know whether he needs a crowd, a big stadium fight or just a buzzing Leeds crowd to get himself going. So I'm hoping that is the case and that, you know, he's back to his best this weekend because, you know, we all want the Brits to do well. Why wouldn't we? And Josh Warrington, before his defeat to Lara, we arguably the best featherweight in the world. So, yeah, I'm hoping that the lack of a crowd last time was maybe just one of the reasons why he did get beat and that this time around he could hopefully correct it.
Yeah, and my only worry about it being in Leeds is if Josh Warrington gets a bit too into the heated in the moment. Obviously, that Leeds crowd's going to be immense, and maybe tries to put on a show and trade with Lara. I think that is where his biggest problem will lie. If he tries a bit too hard to kind of get the finish, I think that's where Lara can catch him. And obviously, we saw in that first fight just how powerful and just how strong Maurizio Lara is. So that is kind of like my only worry with this. I think we will probably see a lot more calculated, a lot more measured Josh Warrington because he has to respect Lara after that fight. I think going into that first fight, there wasn't a lot of respect for Maurizio Lara. Everyone was looking at the Kanshu fight. Obviously, whatever happened with Kanshu now after losing to Lee Wood, he's kind of gone to the wayside and everyone was kind of looking into the future for Josh Warrington. Whereas it does seem in this fight, even though Warrington is still the favourite, people kind of respect Maurizio Lara and kind of show just how of a threat this is. And for Warrington, if we do get a repeat of the first fight, do you think that kind of is his career kind of slowed down, even if not over?
Yeah, I'd say so. I'd say if he suffers another defeat like the first fight, similar to that, say he gets stopped, I don't really know where he can go, to be honest.
Yeah.
That's not me turning around and saying, "Oh, he has to retire," because who am I to say that? But it'd be difficult to see where Warrington could go if he was to get beaten again. So that's what I that's another aspect of this fight that makes it really interesting for me. You know, the fear of me. Well, he'll know better than us, obviously, but Warrington might be thinking, you know, right, well, if I lose this, that's me. I'm done with it. What more can I do? So maybe that's adding fuel to the fire. He clearly loves boxing and he loves fighting in front of a crowd. So I'm hoping that he does get the job done. And I don't know, there's a few interesting aspects to this fight because obviously we just touched on, you know, fighting in front of his home crowd Could that play in his favour? Could it work against him if he gets too into it and gets caught by Lara in the pocket or whatever? And I think the main factor for me is the power of Lara, because I know I mentioned it in our betting video as well. His power is ridiculous for a featherweight. He's definitely the hardest punching featherweight in the world that I can think of anyway. So last time Warrington, and he actually did take a lot of clean shots. Okay, he ended up getting stopped, but there was a few that he took that didn't really buzz him. So he might have a really good chin, Warrington. I'm sure he does have a good chin. But is Lara just too powerful? Can Warrington take that amount of shots for a prolonged period of time in this fight? Obviously, he won't want to, because he'll want to. That's boxing, isn't it? You want to hit and don't get hit. But sometimes you got to take one to give one, and Warrington's very much like that. Do you know what he's like? High guard, come forward, takes a few shots, but lands twice as many of his own. So yeah, I hope Warrington wins, but I do definitely think this is a close fight. Not just because it wasn't just a lucky knockout from Lara last time. It's not like Warrington's going to be a massive favorite, and you can't just say, oh yeah, but Lara got lucky. It was just a shot from the gods. It wasn't, because it was coming, and we knew he was going to get stopped from the fourth round onwards. We knew he was going to get stopped at some point, Warrington. So yeah, it's a really interesting fight, and I'm hoping that it lives up to it, because it's certainly, for me, fight of the night.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's probably the most intriguing fight actually we've had in a while, especially in Britain. For me, if Warrington does lose, and again, I'm in the same camp as you, I hope he wins, and I do think he will win. But I think if Lara does get the win, I think the only fight I can really see Warrington getting is maybe a Kid Galahad fight again, just because he beat him the first time. So Kid Galahad might look at that and just want to revenge that loss. Obviously, there is no world title on the line on Saturday night, so that kind of, it's not like no one will be losing a belt. And if you're Mauricio Lara and you win this fight, suddenly maybe you are the biggest name in the featherweight division if you win and beat Josh Warrington twice, who was, as you say, looked upon before that first fight in February as the kind of king of the division and definitely one of the most talented in the division. Obviously, a lot's happened since then in the featherweight division, and it's probably quite quickly becoming my favorite division in boxing. Do you see whoever wins this fight on Saturday as kind of the king of the featherweights?
No, to be honest, I don't actually. But I had Warrington as the king of the featherweights before the Lara defeat, but then it sounds weird saying it because Warrington's obviously beaten Kid Galahad, but that Galahad performance against Jazzy Dickens was amazing. Like if he fights like that, I think he can beat anyone at featherweight. And then you look at Lee Wood as well, and you think, where did that performance come from? Do you know what I mean? He was immense against Kanju. So judging off Warrington's, obviously a lot of questions will be answered this weekend as to what Warrington has left and stuff. But fights that you thought Warrington would win easily, or all of a sudden now, that's a great fight. Like if he ever fought likes of Lee Wood or Kid Galahad again, then obviously you've got your Gary Russell's, Navarrete as well,
Conlon,
of course.
Conlon as well.
Conlon, yeah, which is Conlon. I don't think he's close to being the king of the featherweight division yet. I think a few years time, maybe. I don't see why not. But at the minute, I'd say it's probably Kid Galahad or Emmanuel Navarrete for me would be the king of the featherweights. Even if Warrington does avenge his loss, because I know in boxing there's a long old debate about the belts and do they really hold any value when there's 55 of them in every division. But there is no belt on the line for Warrington. And then if you look at the champions, I do think Galahad now, just after that last performance, I'd actually make Galahad a favourite against Warrington, whether Warrington wins or lose. If Warrington even wins against Lara, I'd still make Galahad a favourite against him now. Because even the first fight they had, Galahad, a lot of people thought he'd won. It was close. So I think Galahad is probably the king of the featherweights, or Navarrete for sure.
So yeah, I think if Warrington wins, I kind of am more on board with you. I think it's Warrington or Galahad for me, and that is the fight that I want to see. But if Lara pulls it off and beats Warrington twice in a year, then for me, Lara is the even though he holds no belts, he's beaten the guy who was the guy. Do you know what I mean? Like he is for me the king of the featherweights until someone then comes and beats him. I know that's going a bit down like the Ring magazine route, isn't it? With the guy who beats the guy. But yeah, for me, if Lara can pull off another KO victory over Josh Warrington, he is the king of the featherweights. And I'd love to see Lara in there with the likes of Kid Galahad and that power he holds. Like I think it is enough to kind of threaten anyone and any belt. And this division just kind of is sitting up so nicely. And I hope we do see the fights. I know Lee Wood, you mentioned there, obviously been ordered to fight Michael Conlan, which I think is a great fight. Then obviously you got Kid Galahad. Jazza Dickens is still in and around that mix at the domestic scene as well. And Navarrete and Kid Galahad, Josh Warrington, Lara, like there's so many good fights. And I just hope we do see them. So yeah, that is the main event. What a main event. And I think everyone will be looking forward to that. In the co-main slot, we've got the Katie Taylor's 4 world title belts on the line as she takes on the 18-3 Jennifer Han. For you, is this kind of a stepping stone fight for Katie Taylor? Does Jennifer Han actually hold any threat to her?
I don't think she has a massive lot of threat to Katie Taylor. I think Katie Taylor will. I think she'll deal with Han relatively comfortably. Not saying she'll stop her because it's difficult for women to stop each other when there's 2-minute rounds, but that's a debate for another time. But yeah, no, I think Katie Taylor. I think it's more of a get her out, get her active again fight. I know her last fight was against Natasha Jonas, and that was a great fight. It was very close. Might have taken a lot out of her. So a fight like this, I'm not saying it is an easy fight. She's 1-50 to win, so I can't see her losing it all. So I will just say, yeah, it is an easy fight for me. I don't think Han. So yeah, I think that it's just a matter of getting active again for Katie Taylor. I know Han's coming up. She was a featherweight, fought at super featherweight, now up at lightweight. So is she going to be able to handle the size of Katie Taylor? She'll probably be a bit bigger than her, so even more powerful and more spiteful. So I'm not too sure. I don't think that, although Han hasn't lost since 2014, and she's won her last 8 fights, I don't think you can say that she's a live underdog, really, to be honest with you. I think it's just a matter of Katie Taylor getting in there, getting the win, and maybe looking forward to another couple of big fights in her career, whether that be a Serrano or other big names.
Yeah, Jennifer Han definitely does have a decent resume, as you say. Like having not lost since 2014, she was the featherweight champion for I think it was 6 years. So she obviously does have some pedigree. But again, I think she is the IBF mandatory, so I think that is kind of why this fight was made. But again, yeah, I think in that lightweight division, Katie Taylor's kind of cleaned up, and she does kind of need to someone needs to come to her division, or she needs to kind of move on as well. Because she's 18-0, she'll most likely be 19-0, and I think everyone wants to see those Amanda Serrano fights. I know Serrano put on another brilliant performance on Sunday night. So again, win this fight. They've both fought around the same time, like a week. So let's hopefully get that fight on towards the end of the year, because to be honest, I can't see Jennifer Han causing Katie Taylor too many problems. And then another fight on this card, which obviously we have previewed before, feels a bit like deja vu here, but is the Conor Benn Adrian Granados fight. Obviously was billed for the second week of fight camp, overtaken by the Lee Wood Kanshu fight. Again, I know we have spoken about this before, but it's only right to put it on again. How much of a threat do you think Adrian Granados is to Conor Benn?
Yeah, he's arguably the toughest test of his career. I know I think Samuel Vargas on paper was potentially a bigger threat to Conor Benn. I know Conor Benn dealt with him in one round, but yeah, Granados on paper, he is a threat. I don't think he'll win. I think he's, it's one of those fights where they're hoping Ben goes a few rounds, gets hit a few times, shows a bit of character in there, shows what he's got, but ultimately Granados doesn't have enough to beat him. I think it's one of those ones. Another stepping stone fight almost for Conor Benn. So if he wins, provided he does win, which I think he will, it's a good name on it to have on your resume because Granados has been in with the likes of Robert Easter, Danny Garcia, Sean Porter, Adrian Bruner, Fortuna as well. And I know he's lost 7 or 8 times, but it's only been once that he's actually been stopped, and that was by Danny Garcia, who's obviously a really powerful welterweight. So if Conor Benn was to go in there and get the stoppage win, which I do think he will, as you can see in our betting show, I think a stoppage win from Conor Benn on Saturday is definitely putting his name up there as one of the most dangerous men in the division and captain of the Who Needs Him club, because I wouldn't, if I was one of the champions or getting fringe world level, about to get a world title shot, and they ordered me to fight Conor Benn, I wouldn't want to take it. He's he's young, he's only getting better, he's only getting more powerful, he's growing into his body, he just looks like an absolute animal. And I'm a big Conor Benn fan, so I do think that although Granados obviously does hold a threat and he's been in at a higher level than Conor Benn has, it's what does he have left now at this stage of his career? It's a perfect crossover for me where Conor Benn gets a good name on his record. A lot of people look at the record and think, Granados, that's a great win. But is it a Granados of 3, 4, 5 years ago? It's not. But then again, I could get proved wrong, but I think Conor Benn deals with him relatively comfortably.
Yeah, I do quite like the matchmaking in this fight because obviously Granados, even if he isn't what he was 4 or 5 years ago, he's kind of still like that fringe world level where I think in that division especially, once you get into like the top 8, top 5 especially, it's murderer's row and there is literally, it's pound for pound greats in that division. I know we've spoken about that welterweight division a lot. So, and as much as I like Conor Benn, he's not quite there yet, and putting him in with someone at the top of that division probably isn't sensible or even worthwhile at this point in time, but he definitely will get there and he can get there. So I think these kind of fights where it's a tough opponent like Adrian Granados, it's a decent name, maybe not to the more casual fans, but if you've seen him in with Sean Porter and Adrian Broner, you know who he is, and he has got that good resume and those good names on his own resume. So for me, it is good matchmaking from Matchroom to kind of. Boxing's hard, isn't it? Because you get moaned at for giving people too many warm-up fights and not putting them in the big names. But again, a guy like Conor Benn, who was so raw when he was younger, he kind of needs that kind of slow growth. But as long as we can kind of see growth, that's all that matters. Like, I think obviously Samuel Vargas and Granados probably has the edge in terms of like he'll hang around. He has only been finished by Danny Garcia, as you say. Like if Ben can knock him out, that kind of puts you've done something that Sean Porter couldn't do, Adrian Broner couldn't do. So now you're looking pretty good, and then he is kind of ready to move on to those bigger names. But yeah, so I think it is really good matchmaking from Matchroom.
Here's one for you. Playing matchmaker, 2022. Conor Benn gets the win, and and he does it by stoppage where he looks good. What about a Conor Benn David Avanesian fight?
Yeah, and I know David Avanesian's spoken a lot this week about Conor Benn kind of ignoring him and not wanting that fight. I think that again, that is another step up, and that is probably the best name. Obviously, Avanesian beat Josh Kelly, and he's a quite a big name in the UK after that fight. So that is kind of the next step up, where if you beat Avanesian, you're definitely in that world level scene, and you're looking at like becoming a mandatory, aren't you, at that point? If you get those kind of wins against Vargas, Granados, Avanesian back to back, you now definitely are in that world title kind of mandatory kind of pushing on. I think
I agree.
That division. So I know we were just talking about, and I said the featherweight division is like one of my favorite now in boxing, but the welterweight as well is just incredible. Like if we can actually get some of these fights, like who's to say like Virgil Ortiz versus Conor Benn in like 2024? Like I know they're both quite young right now, but in 2 or 3 years' time, those two fighting each other will be incredible. And just
like Jaron Ennis in there as well. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
all of these fighters. There's so many. But and even obviously still at the top of the tree at welterweight, you've obviously got Errol Spence, and hopefully he can get back in there. We don't know what's going to happen with him. And you've obviously got Terence Crawford, who hasn't had a massive fight at welterweight yet. So a couple of years' time, we could have Terence Crawford at the top of the tree with fighting people like Virgil Ortiz, Conor Benn, Jaron Ennis all back to back. You never know. So it makes for some amazing fights in the next few years.
Obviously, boxing doesn't like to give us what we want, but it would be ideal. And I do think, actually, if you're already heard and you think Conor Benn is, and you're confident Conor Benn is ready, you pay Ugas as much money as he needs to come to the UK and fight Conor Benn in London. Because I think that is where Conor Benn can win his world title. And I think that is a fight where Ugas is brilliant, don't get me wrong, and he is good. But you've seen kind of in the past few days, he's still talking about Manny Pacquiao. He's still talking about that fight. He obviously wants another payday. So if you're already heard and you can get the zone to give you a little bit of money, that is the way that Conor Benn can win a world title in his next kind of 1 or 2 fights, especially if he puts on a great performance on Saturday. And I think that Ugas Benn, especially with Ugas beating Pacquiao, like that's a big name now, like within world boxing. And I'd probably be favourite for that fight just because of like Ugas hasn't really. He's a brilliant Cuban fighter. He's got a great resume, but a lot of people didn't respect him before that fight, and that is a fight that I'd like to see.
Yeah, I'd definitely like to see that fight, and that's one. I don't know whether he'd be favourite, but he might be. But it's definitely one I could see Conor Benn winning if he progresses at the same rate that he is at the minute.
Yeah, definitely. So then now we're going to move on to, I think we're both in agreement that this is kind of we like to give an under the radar fight for each card. And if you're going to watch, you're going to start watching at a certain time, start with the Maxi Hughes Straffon fight, because this fight kind of, it's for the international IBO title. And I know I'm a big lover of Maxi Hughes. I know you like him as well. And we both think he probably wins this fight. For you, what is just so intriguing about this fight?
I think it's the element of the unknown for me, because you look at Straffon and nobody had heard of him before the Tennyson knockout. And obviously he knocked him out in a round, but that was just literally throw all technique out the window. We're just going to stand here and trade. First one to go goes, and it was obviously James Tennyson who got clipped first. So I don't know. Can Straffon, of his 24 wins, he's got 17 of them by knockout. So he's clearly a huge puncher. He's probably very reliant on his punch. So I don't know whether he can actually box, whereas Maxi Hughes can. And Maxi Hughes again he's just looked amazing recently, hasn't he? Really, I know we've both said he's just one of those fighters that when's he gonna get the respect he deserves? He's constantly going into fights as an underdog. He's constantly going in and delivering. So I think it's about time people put a bit of respect on Maxi Hughes' name. And as you say, I think it's for the IBO title, isn't it? So yeah, his last 3 wins are John O'Carroll, Maxi Hughes. That's a great win. And the victor, and I don't even want to pronounce the guy's name. Is it?
I was waiting for that.
Well, I don't know how to pronounce it, but I think people know. Instead of me making a mug of myself, go look at who I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And then Paul Highland Jr. as well. It's a good win. So he has looked like a new fighter since even the Liam Walsh defeat. He's looked really good since then. So yeah, I think Maxi Hughes will obviously have seen that Straffon KO over James Tennyson. So he'll be very wary that this guy is a serious puncher. So he'll want to stay out of range and box on the back foot, maybe not on the back foot, but box on the outside. Box smart, box clever. And I think if he does that, he can definitely get the win. And on the betting show, we both think he could win on points. So yeah, I hope so. And you got to say that in 2022, the winner of this fight is definitely in the mix for a world title shot, because before Straffon beat Tennyson, everyone was talking about Tennyson getting world title shots. Johnny Nelson was talking about him knocking out Gervonta Davis. So Straffon clearly obviously got the win over Tennyson, so that puts him in the line. And Maxi Hughes has got some great wins, and this would be another one. So yeah, why not? I could see either of these men getting world title shot next year, and hopefully it's Maxi Hughes.
Yeah, and I know that would be it, especially from where Maxi Hughes was kind of. I know I spoke to him before the Paul Highland Jr. fight, and a lot of fighters over the last year, because of COVID, not being as many cards and stuff, have kind of got lost a little bit. And I think a lot of fighters would look at the last 18 months as kind of like setting them back a little bit because they can't be as active. They haven't been as active and no fans and for whatever reason. But Max Hughes is kind of someone that's gone, I'll fight anybody, anywhere. He took that John O'Carroll fight and everyone, I think he was an 8-1 underdog, comfortably beat John O'Carroll. Then goes into the next fight, who again I'm not going to try and pronounce, and dismantles him as well. And then the Paul Highland Jr. fight, like Paul Highland Jr. is a good fighter, like, and to beat him by unanimous decision on that MTK show again just shows kind of the level that Maxi Hughes is at, and especially over the last 18 months, he's kind of like, I don't know if it is right to give a fighter of COVID, but like if there's anyone that's kind of like their career and the trajectory of their career has changed over the last 18 months, I think you'd struggle to find someone who has changed their career as much as Maxi Hughes. I know speaking to him, he's still got a part-time job, a full-time job. Like boxing is still his part-time career. Imagine if he wins this fight and he can kind of pursue this full-time. I think he did 6 weeks of full-time training for this fight in camp while he wasn't working. And if he can kind of win this fight and go full-time, like if that's what he can do with a full-time job, 9 to 5 or whatever hours he works, like imagine him being able to do it full-time. Like the sky's the limit, and he's clearly got talent there. He's got heart, and yeah, I for one am really hoping he pulls it off on Saturday night. And I'm quite confident that he will.
Same here. Can't wait.
So then there was the 4 main fights, and obviously on the card again, Hopey Price is getting another run out. Obviously he only fought in fight camp. This time he takes on Zahid Hussein, who on paper looks like 16-1, looks like a good step up for Hopey Price. Are you looking forward to that fight?
Yeah. Hopey Price, he's good to watch. He's definitely a prospect, and as you say, on paper this is his toughest test. I know the guy's record's a little bit padded, but you know you can only beat who's in front of you, I suppose. Yeah, I think I like watching Hopey Price. Like big, tall, rangy. He's huge for the weight, isn't he? Like he is huge, and he's still only a kid. So I don't see him hanging about that weight, obviously, for his whole career, because he could go through the divisions with the size he has. But yeah, he's interesting watching. Hopey Price, I do, and I think I think he will win, and comfortably enough, judging by the guy's record. But yeah, why not? He's definitely a prospect, and he's one to watch for the future. And I know another one on the card that we likes, Ebony Bridges. She's obviously, since the Shannon Courtney fight, although she lost that fight, it was she showed a lot of heart, a lot of grit, a lot of determination. And then in her last fight, she stopped Beck Connolly, and a lot of people didn't think he would be able to do that. So yeah, she's clearly putting the work in. I know she's training, isn't it, with Enzo Macronelli now?
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing her fight as well. She, although maybe not top level opponents, she's exciting to watch. She's marketable. She knows she's fun on social media. She can talk. So yeah, she's another one who I think, although she'll probably win comfortably, she's a good one to watch.
Yeah, I agree with everything you're saying, and that is the whole card for Saturday night. Again, I think this is the first card with like full fans, and I think Headingley will be packed out. And I think that is, if not the great fights we've got in this card, that is something to watch as well, because I think the atmosphere will be electric, and it's just great to see full packed out stadiums, especially in a fight city like Leeds. So that has been the Warrington Lara card preview for ESBR Boxing. Once again, we do these every single week. So if you did like what you heard and what you saw, please do hit that subscribe button, because we will be back next week. Next week, I think, Paul, it's the Sonny Edwards and Sam Eggington cards. So, yep. And also, let's not forget, we do like freak shows in here, and it's Vitor Belfort, Oscar De La Hoya. I don't know if I can persuade Paul to talk anything meaningful about that fight, but we will see.
Well, we'll see next week. We'll see.
We'll see. And Anderson Silva as well. I know you're a big UFC guy, so Anderson Silva fighting as well. So yeah, thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe once again. Do check out Greg's Lara Warrington prediction video. That's on the channel that went out last week. So if you want to know a bit more about both guys' fighters and how Greg sees the fight going, make sure to check that out. Paul, again, I know we said it in the review video, but do check out Paul's interview with Eric Donovan, who fights this Saturday in Ireland. So again, really good interview. Eric Donovan's a really interesting guy, so do check that out. Thanks again, Paul, for this week's preview show, and we'll see you guys later.